Hello everyone, my name is Frank and today you're watching Fun with Flags and History. And today we're going to be concluding our series on the Greek military junta by talking about the 1974 Turkish invasion of Cyprus, as well as the collapse of said junta and the restoration of democracy in Greece. Let's get started, shall we? After Colonel Papadopoulos was removed from power through Ioannidis' coup, Brigadier General Dimitrios Ioannidis appointed General Phaedon Gizikis as president and Adamantios Androsopoulos as Prime Minister of Greece. Ioannidis instead pulled strings from behind as Greece's strongman, as he has always preferred to stay away from the limelight. The only problem with this successor to the Papadopoulos era of the regime is this: opportunism from Ioannidis. Brigadier Ioannidis used the counter-coup to claim power from Papadopoulos, and it claimed that the Papadopoulos faction was straying away from the revolution's ideas, as Papadopoulos was corrupt, according to Ioannidis. Papadopoulos and his junta always claimed that the April 21, 1967 revolution saved Greece from the old party system. Now, Ioannidis was in effect claiming that his coup saved the revolution from the Papadopoulos faction. The dysfunction, as well as the ideological fragmentation and fractionalization of the junta, was finally out in the open. Ioannidis, however, did not make these accusations personally, as he always tried to avoid unnecessary publicity. Things were beginning to fall apart for the Greek government at the time. On July 15, 1974, Brigadier Dimitrios Ioannidis had ordered the Greek army in Cyprus to overthrow Makarios III, the current president of Cyprus, in 1974. Ioannidis had supported the coup against Makarios through the far-right EOKAB paramilitary group, an ultra-nationalist Greek military-backed paramilitary group that believed in the same idea of enosis and Greek nationalism as the Greek government at the time. Enosis, for those that are unfamiliar, is a term that refers to the unification of Cyprus under Greek rule. This idea was pushed by Greece under the Kingdom of Greece since the 1950s. While it was softened in the 1960s through the attempt of influencing its head of state, Makarios III, this attempt had failed when Makarios III refused to work with Athens. And when this attempt to work with Makarios III failed, the Greek government had decided it was best to destabilize the government to allow for enosis to become a much more possible reality. Anyway, when it came to the coup, it was supported by the current head of the Greek government at the time, with officers in the Hellenic armed forces assisting the Cypriot National Guard during the coup, who captured the President Palace in Nicosia. The entire palace was burned down during the coup. Makarios barely survived escaping from the burning building, and he fled the capital during the chaos and flew to Paphos, where the British government was successful in his extraction out of Cyprus. Makarios was flown on a Royal Air Force aircraft from Paphos to London the next morning. The next day, Makarios had made a speech to the United Nations Security Council exclaiming that Cyprus had been invaded by Greece. The newly established government in Cyprus was a puppet regime that took direct orders from Ioannidis and his government in Athens. They had also used the Cyprus Broadcasting Corporation to broadcast the victory message across the island that Makarios is dead. This, of course, was either taken literally, which would have been false, as Makarios had fled to Cyprus to London, or in a symbolic, metaphorical manner to show that the Cypriot government would now take orders directly from Greece. However, Makarios later debunked these through messages that he gave personally by himself. The new government heavily censored the press and stopped left-wing newspapers being printed in Cyprus. Only right-wing newspapers, Machi, Ethniki, and Agon, continued publishing, and their style was very propagandistic. Samson, the new head of state at the time, did not openly announce his intention of enosis in the days following the coup, but instead focused on suppressing any support for Makarios and heavy propaganda to vilify his government. In response to the chaos, Rauf Denktaş, the leader of the Turkish Cypriot administration, stated that he believed that the events were among Greek Cypriots and called for Turkish Cypriots to not go out, as well as for the UNFICYP, or the United Nations Peacekeeping Force in Cyprus, to take extensive security measures for Turkish Cypriots. The Cypriot National Guard made no attempts to enter the Turkish Cypriot enclaves, but raided Greek and Turkish Cypriot homes alike in mixed villages to confiscate weapons. The Turkish government brought claims that ammunition was being carried to Cyprus by Olympic Air to the attention of UNFICYP. Whether the Turkish Cypriots suffered as a direct result of the coup remains controversial, but Sampson was seen as an untrustworthy figure due to his pro-Enosis policies and brutal role against Turkish Cypriots in 1963. However, shit was going to hit the fan soon enough. On July 20th, 1974, 5 days after the Greek coup on Cyprus, the Turkish military invaded the Greek-backed Republic of Cyprus. This action by Turkey was provoked not only by the coup caused by the Greek military junta, but also actions that were brought forth by the Turkish Prime Minister at the time, Bülent Ecevit. Bülent Ecevit believed it was necessary to invade Cyprus as a signatory nation for the 1960 Treaty of Guarantee, which used Article 4, the right of the guarantor powers to take action to re-establish the current state of affairs in Cyprus. Heavily armed Turkish soldiers landed at Kyrenia at early dawn, who met resistance from both Greek soldiers that were back in the Cypriot military junta, as well as members of the Greek Cypriot armed forces. The same day, the Turkish Cypriot enclave of Limassol surrendered to the Cypriot National Guard. The Cypriot National Guard, in turn, committed horrible acts in the wake of surrender. The entire quarter was burned, women were raped, and children were shot. Even after this, the survivors, approximately 1,300 Turkish Cypriots, were placed into a prison camp after the events that took place. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, the prisoners of war taken at this stage and before the second invasion included 385 Greek Cypriots in Adana, 63 Greek Cypriots in the Saray prison, and 3,268 Turkish Cypriots in various camps in Cyprus. On July 23, 1974, the Greek military junta that Georgios Papadopoulos had formed and Dimitrios Ioannidis had taken over crumbled under its own weight. During the invasion, it was said that Dimitrios Ioannidis had yelled at American diplomat Joseph Sisko, who was involved personally with the affairs with both Greece, Turkey, and Cyprus, over the debacle that involved the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. He said, and I quote, "You betrayed us. You assured us that you would prevent any Turkish landing." End quote. As the war with Turkey began to grow more possible, senior military officials within the junta began to withdraw support for Ioannidis and his government. Instead, they chose to back a national unity government that would kickstart the transition from dictatorship to the restoration of democracy in Greece. This government began to form when junta appointed President of Greece, Feidon Gizikis, called for a meeting with the old guard politicians of Greece. Although former Prime Minister Panagiotis Kanopoulos was originally backed, on July 24th, Gizikis finally invited former Prime Minister Konstantinos Karamanlis, who had resided in Paris since 1963, to assume the role. Karamanlis returned to Athens on a French presidency Learjet made available to him by President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, a close friend, and was sworn in as Prime Minister under Feidon Gizikis. Karamanlis' new party, New Democracy, won the November 1974 general election, and he became Prime Minister. Parliamentary democracy was thus restored, and the Greek legislative elections of 1974 were the first free elections held in a decade. A referendum held on December 8, 1974 rejected re-establishment of the monarchy by a 2-to-1 margin, and Greece was officially a republic, a democratic one. Prior to the Greek parliamentary elections, however, peace talks began between Turkey and Greece over the issue of Cyprus. The first round of peace talks began in Geneva, Switzerland on July 25, 1974. British Prime Minister James Callaghan issued a declaration that the Turkish occupation zone should not be extended, that the Turkish enclave should immediately be evacuated by the Greeks, and that a further conference should be held at Geneva with the two Cypriot communities present to restore peace and to establish the constitutional government in Cyprus. In advance of this, they made two observations, one upholding the 1960 constitution, the other appearing to abandon it. They called for the Turkish vice president to resume his functions, but they also noted the existence in practice of two autonomous administrations, that of the Greek Cypriot community and that of the Turkish Cypriot community. By that time, the Second Conference met on August 14, 1974. International sympathy, which had been with the Turks in their first attack, was swinging back towards Greece now that now that democracy was restored in Greece. At the second round of peace talks, Turkey demanded that the Cypriot government accept its plan for a federal state and population transfer. When the Cypriot acting president Clarides asked for 36 to 48 hours in order to consult with Athens and with Greek Cypriot leaders, the Turkish foreign minister denied Clarides that opportunity on the grounds that Makarios and others would use it to play for more time. These peace talks would do nothing, as the second invasion of Cyprus had been planned by the Turkish government. After the conference, the Turkish foreign minister Turan Güneş had said to the prime minister Bülent Ecevit, "When I say Ashe should go on vacation, it will mean that our armed forces are ready to go into action. Even if the telephone line is tapped, that would rouse no suspicion." An hour and a half after the conference broke up, Turan Güneş called Ecevit and said the code phrase. On August 14th, Turkey launched its second peace operation, which eventually resulted in the Turkish occupation of 37% of Cyprus. British's then Foreign Secretary and later Prime Minister James Callaghan later disclosed that to U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger that they vetoed at least one British military action to preempt the Turkish landing. Turkish occupation reached as far south as the Oronia salient. In the process, many Greek Cypriots became refugees. The number of refugees is estimated to be between 140,000 and 160,000. The ceasefire from 1974 separates the two communities on the island and is commonly referred to as the Green Line. After the conflict, Cypriot representatives and the United Nations consented to the transfer of the remainder of 51,000 Turkish Cypriots that had not left their homes in the south to settle in the north, if they wished to do so. The United Nations Security Council had challenged the legality of Turkey's actions because Article 4 of the Treaty of Guarantee gives the right to guarantors to take action with the sole aim of re-establishing the state of affairs. The aftermath of Turkey's invasion, however, did not safeguard the Republic's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but had the opposite effect: the de facto partition of the Republic and the creation of a separate political entity in the north. On February 13, 1975, Turkey declared the occupied areas of the Republic of Cyprus to be a federated Turkish state, to the universal condemnation of the international community. The United Nations recognizes the sovereignty of the Republic of Cyprus according to the terms of 1960 with its Treaty of Guarantee. The conflict continues to affect Turkey's relations with Cyprus, Greece, and the European Union. In 1975, after the restoration of democracy, trials began for former members of the Greek military junta. It had been commonly described as Greece's Nuremberg, with it involving the trials of former members of the military junta in Greece. The principal leaders of the 1967 coup, Georgios Papadopoulos, Stelanos Patakos, and Nikolaos Makarezos, were sentenced to death for high treason. Following the trial, shortly after the sentences were pronounced, they were commuted to life imprisonment by the Karamanlis government. The trial of the instigators was followed by a second trial, which investigated the events surrounding the Athens Polytechnic, known as the Trial of the Polytechnic. And finally, a series of trials involving incidents of torture in Greece, known as the Trials of the Torturers. While the physical collapse of the junta as a government was immediately caused by the Cyprus debacle, its ideological collapse was already triggered by the 1973 Athens Polytechnic uprising. The uprising at the Polytechnion was the event that discredited the military government and acted as a key catalyst for its eventual demise by exposing the internal contradictions and stresses of the regime, thus destroying the myth of the political cohesion of the junta and therefore irreparably damaging the political credibility of the Ethnosotirios Epanastasis and its message. Greek Cypriots who were unhappy with the United States not stopping the Turkish invasion took part in protests and riots in front of the American embassy. Ambassador Roger Davies was assassinated during the protest by a sniper from the extremist EOKAB group. The effects of the junta are still felt in Greece today, as well as Cyprus. In Greece, the junta is looked at positively and seen as an inspiration to the Greek political party Chrysi Avgi, or Golden Dawn as it is known in English, a fascist ultranationalist political organization that is strong on the idea of Greeks for Greeks as well as other forms of xenophobia and racism. And in Cyprus, Cyprus is still divided and has been since 1974 with the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. This division was further increased and solidified with the official declaration of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus in 1983, a nation that has only been recognized by the Republic of Turkey. As a tourist, you could actually visit this divided nation as it is one of the only few remnants of the Cold War still around, of course divided nations such as North and South Korea or East and West Germany. But it also holds the last divided capital ever, as the capital city of Nicosia is held both by the international recognized Republic of Cyprus and the Turkish-backed Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, although they hold the northern half of Nicosia. There, you will find a nation that is like seeing night and day, one that is touristy and westernized with restaurants like McDonald's and Burger King, as well as other things, and the other is more isolated and almost like a time warp to a much more simpler and traditional time. But this isn't an advertisement to visit Cyprus, but rather to show the divisions that have divided this island nation between Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots to this day. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and this conclusion to the Greek military junta. I do again apologize for my lack of timing when it comes to these videos. A lot of this has to do with side affairs that have come up as of late, including school, as well as some other side hustles I've been doing. But of course, now that I'm making videos again, I will hopefully continue the trend of making it a much more regular appearance, although I might do them much more downgraded and on a downgraded level. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I do appreciate the support. Comment down what you think would be interesting, your thoughts, opinions, what you would like to see next on the channel. Share this to your friends and family if you think that they might find this channel interesting, as well as they might find obscure history like this interesting. And please, if you found this channel interesting, please subscribe and click the notification bell to get notifications of when I will probably upload again. This is, of course, Frank Perry of Fun with Flags and History signing off. Have yourself a good one.